I don't think it's unfair that people who have like made all of these bread tubers rich and famous down the pathway to get there, they also might feel a little betrayed that they supported these projects of these incredible creatives who brought forward these messages that hadn't been seen on a scale on YouTube like that before. But now there's people in other parts of the world that really need our help and our attention, and everyone is going silent for the first time now on this one topic, specifically in relation to Israel and Israel's genocide of Palestinians and Israel's colonialism. And that feels so scary and lonely and weird now that, like, where are all the heroes that the left was supposed to have amassed all this time? That the right has all their people that they can say are pro-Trump, are pro-genocide, are pro-Israel, are pro-extermination, because that's who they are. They're racist. So, you may have heard of these two folks, Hasan Piker and Contrapoints, aka Natalie. They apparently are currently at odds, battling a wee bit. I wasn't going to talk about that in and of itself, just alone. I also wanted to talk a bit about how a lot of people are obsessed with Hasan right now, and not with his, proportions, body to head size mass, not with his career or his advocacy. They seem to be very, very upset if the future of the Democratic Party is an alliance with figures like him, or if they should cast him aside and pee on him a little. That seems to be the debate going on constantly between all these different pundits, the Bulwark, Pod Save America. I think the libs and the progressives and the center left are having an existential crisis right now, especially the centrist libs. More than anyone, they seem to, because like there's other centrists and liberal governments that are having way more success than they are, and there's others that are having way more failures than they're having. Like Keir Starmer, great example of absolute liberal dreck, where you're trying to appease everyone while appealing to no one, right? That's kind of Keir Starmer. Whereas Mark Carney is having this kind of just like complete soft coup takeover of Canada, because he found this very, very juicy middle ground where conservatives are going to be really amenable to his policies if he's very pro-energy, pro-climate change, pro-destroy the world, pro-Canada is for sale, and basically not making too much noise about human rights so they don't have to get too upset about things like trans people or high immigration rates. So keep those a little bit at bay. It turns out Mark Carney's combination is working very well for the liberals here, because now liberals and conservatives, they're kind of interchangeable, right? They kind of have very similar beliefs, and now they're all kind of like, well, I guess we're all just libs now. We're the mega lib, the omega lib. That kind of seems to be what's happening. So they're getting really mad at Hasan Piker because he's like, America, you should end your relationship with Israel. It's a death pact. And honestly, colonialism is not in any way, shape, or form going to benefit humanity in the long run. We should end all of our colonial projects. That kind of stuff is icky to the we want brunch back crowd, right? Which are fighting pretty heavily right now to get brunch back to America.
American individualism. So my goal is to instill class consciousness in people and help them identify what would be more help them identify who is actually causing harm to them. And in my assessment, it's the billionaires and the corporations who actually control the levers of power in this country, and not the vulnerable populations, the marginalized communities that the Republicans very effectively take people's frustrations and redirect them towards, right? It's not a trans person or a Guatemalan migrant that's like raising your rent. It's your landlord. It's not a trans person or a Mexican undocumented immigrant that's working in a field that is responsible for why your grocery prices are going up. That's that's greedflation and corporate consolidation. That's at the heart of that issue.
And when you think about your own show.
So he's been on Pod Save America. I know the Bulwark did a segment on Hasan that got really mad at him. A lot of the Just Vote crowd is very furious at him right now too. The idea being that every couple of years you perform your civic duty and you protest and you fight fascism in the only way that I think liberals know how, which is to cast your ballot, vote, and then you're good, and then you show back up a couple of years later to do the same thing to prevent it, but that's all you got to really do. I know that debate's been going on for a while too. I did want to see what the ContraPoints versus Hasan stuff is though.
It's an Ethan Klein thing where it's like, it can't be my own statements being reflected on by my own community that I've cultivated. It must be some outsider that's pushing them to criticize me. I obviously also have the Pod Johns combo
About, like, who you are,
that I
what
had,
you're-
where I basically, for like, I would say the bulk of our conversation, explain my position on Israel versus Hamas. I think it's a very good conversation that took place with the Pod Johns as well. I think you guys will appreciate it, especially considering that a lot of the liberals that watch Pod Save America, once again, have reacted in the exact same way that they reacted every single time I've been on the Pod Johns, which is excitement. They reacted with excitement, frustration for the way that Democrats speak right now on issues, right? I don't know what CNN is talking about. This guy seems pretty all right. We do need people to be more aware of who he actually is, trying to take what little we actually have away. It's not the LGBT or Latinos or black people or Muslims, it's the rich. Significant improvement over Cory Booker, exactly the kind of conversation we need. Honestly, this was a very good interview, much better and much more coherent than I expected, given the way some media is talking about Hasan. Appreciated the substantive focus on the issues instead just the controversy. After listening to Hasan for an hour speak clear and concise reasoning, now I understand why they...
That's interesting. Maybe it's just like, you know, the only version of a lot of us that people outside of the left have are the radical ones. Because like I went on a show once in Canada, and I remember the comments filled up first. It was like, Serfs. Oh, that's the like extreme communist guy who's like trying to blah blah blah, all this stuff. And I was like, I don't think I've ever introduced myself as an extreme communist. I mean, if I'm at a party, that'd be pretty badass. Do that next time, please. You know, as I enter the room, be like, hey, attention, hear ye, Lance, the extreme communist have arrived. Something along those lines. But yeah, if all you've ever seen from Hasanabi, let's take this. Yeah, this guy here. If all you've ever seen are the clips online, then my assessment of this dude probably be like, he loves 9/11. He's got a 9/11 fetish. Yeah, he's trying to work himself through that one, and also is a terrorist, and also hates America and wants to make America explode or something. That's like the totality of everything I know from what I've seen online from this dude. And so it's kind of funny that he goes on to Pod Save America, which he's been on before, by the way, but the crowd is just like, oh, it actually sounds like he's talking some sense, and it kind of sounds similar to that thing with like Bernie Sanders, where it's just like, Bernie Sanders is a radical socialist, and then you get him on the show, and then it's just him being like, I think that there's just an unhealthy amount of wealth concentration. Do you agree? I do, but we got to talk about your radical extreme socialism, Mr. Sanders. It's like, okay, well, I think that there's a difference between the 1% and the 99%, and I think all of us are mostly in the 99%, and all the resources go to the 1%. Yep, I agree with that. But tell me about the radical socialism that you're going to do. Are you the next Stalin, Lenin? Are you going to do a Stalin, Lenin together right here? Are we going to get a Soviet-style USSR revolution? Are you going to execute the bourgeoisie? Is that what you're asking for? It's like, so do you agree with everything so far, though? Is it that controversial? I've been casually aware of Hasan, and I've heard about him from controversial comments. This is the first time I've listened to a more in-depth interview. Entered it with an open mind. The perspectives he had helped me expand my understanding on issues between Israel and Palestine. Oh no! It appears like the ideas are dangerous, right? You know who's a much more dangerous and effective communicator for this issue than Hasan? Ta-Nehisi Coates. Because I think he did something by still having the ability to go onto the NBCs and the ABCs of the world, where he basically changed the course of the way people discuss this issue. When he was it ABC, where he just flat out was like, I understand that this is controversial to some, but I've always taken a stance that we should oppose these kinds of systems like apartheid, no matter where they take place, no matter how they form in human history. That's a very clear stance I think everyone can get on board with. And of course, everyone's like, yes, of course, yeah, no, I oppose. It's like, do you oppose slavery? Now it's pretty safe to say in today's day and age, 2026, hopefully, they're going to be like, yeah, I oppose slavery. I think it's wrong. Right. Now, that would have been a brave stance to have taken during the height and peak of slavery in the United States, right? Especially as a white person, right? Like, so you are an abolitionist by definition if you were going to go back into that period of time and talk about how you thought slavery was bad back then. But today, now that we've had some time to get a little bit past it in certain iterations, by the way, I'm not going to say that slavery still hasn't found its own modern incarnations in the prison industrial complex, etc. But you now can be like, yeah, slavery bad. So now if you're like, so apartheid South Africa was bad. Yes, you can agree on that. Yeah, I mean, everyone agrees on that now, right? Even old Genocide Joe was pretty strong in his language against apartheid South Africa. That was a wild thing to see. Cool. So it's one of those things that once it's explained to you, it sounds a lot less radical and a lot less outrageous than it did before, right? So the same thing can apply here. Like, I know a lot of what this guy talks about, you may have just seen the clips. And the clips do look pretty bad. I mean, out of context, if you played that one where he's talking about having the skull fucking Dan Crenshaw or some shit and the America deserved 9/11, whatever that series of events was that got to that clip. Yeah, out of context, I'll admit, it's a wild clip to just show somebody for the very first time. I mean, I can understand why grandmother would be like, who is this terrorist? He's just talking about taking a brave American soldier's skull and inserting himself into it. It's disgusting. I can't stand this man. It's like, well, you guys, you know what? No. I'm not going to bother. There's times when you should pick your fights. This is not mine. Just too much context, Grandma. I get too much preamble here. To explain to you the history of both 9/11, the U.S. relationships with Osama bin Laden, the bin Laden family themselves, and their ties in Saudi Arabia, and I got to get as far back as the Mujahideen and then the funding of them. You got to talk about Rumsfeld. Like, you know what? No, Hasan bad. I agree.
AIPAC wing of the Democratic Party, we should say 99% of the party fear and attack him. Logic and reason are not on the side of the Zionists. I've been casually aware of Hasan Piker and heard about some of his controversial comments. This is the first time I've listened to a more in-depth acceptable. As much as he's a never Trumper, he's also a never Democrat too. Piker's a loser.
Piker's a loser. Destiny makes an appearance. Sex Pestiny. These guys are not equipped to deal with subversive mass-gun radicals and have done more to brainwash these lunatic views than probably any other alternative media platform. I want the Democrat Party to treat me like a never-Trumper, Hasan Piker. Ezra Klein argues that we don't have to limit the discourse to people who deem acceptable, then does somersaults trying to make Hasan Piker seem more acceptable. Well, to be fair, I think they changed the title of that. I'm talking about The Atlantic specifically when it came to the Ezra Klein article on Hasan. Ezra Klein. If you don't know, there was a title that basically was two different titles. When it came to Hassanabi, I can find it. Give me a second.
To deal with subversive mask-on radicals and have done more to brainwash this lunatic views than probably any other alternative media platform. Ezra Klein argues that we don't have to limit discourse to people we deem acceptable, then does somersaults trying to make Hasan Piker seem more acceptable. As much as he's a never Trumper, he's also a never Democrat too. Piker's a loser. His ideas are losers. So is his politics. Notice how the people that refuse to engage me and the ideals that I represent and fight for are the ones who are the most active in disparaging what this movement is, what this movement represents. Many of them can also be identified with Israel first politics as well. Interesting. Or in this sex pest case, obviously a personal vendetta that he's carried for almost a decade. I promise you, Pod Save America, we do not need to hear from this R word. I think we should all just pay less attention to him. Not the president, the other one. Maybe we lived out a little too hard. Let's go back to talking about getting Liz Cheney for a round 2 on the campaign trail. What is this? Your wiki is currently getting more views than Rogan's. Since March 24th, Hassan the Hun's Wikipedia page has seen more daily traffic than Joe Rogan's every single day. Oh, nice. Oh, hell yeah. Zionists acting like it's not about Israel. Shannon Watts did the same thing too. To pretend the debate to push Piker to the fringes over Israel is not only wrong, it's irresponsible. Anti-Semitism aside, Piker has a long list of indefensible anti-American racist misogynistic offenses. Unsure why so many Dems are eager to defend such a bad guy.
I can explain a lot of this to you. One, the Pod Save America boys would not be interested in talking to Hasan Piker if Hasan Piker wasn't as huge as he already is. He's got a massive platform, and his massive platform, I think, is something that the liberals and the Democrats have been trying to understand and flirt with, while not actually endorsing or being a part of, because he's decidedly anti-Zionist, and that's not something that the Democrats want to endorse, right? Like Chuck Schumer has said before that one of his key interests interests in working in politics is to ensure a strong relationship between the U.S. and Israel, which is a very strange thing to say, especially if you're someone who's an American trying to be an American politician voted into power to represent your constituents. But still, that being a very core part of the Democratic Party and one that's really difficult to separate, this has been something that Democrats, this is why, like, in the last election cycle, sure, he was invited to the DNC because, getting someone who's got 20 to 50 to 100,000 live viewers to 200,000 live viewers at the DNC talking about politics, sure, isn't that good? But if he's there talking about Israel bad, now we're going to kick him out. Let's get him out of there. This is too sketchy, getting a little too controversial. Now, the Pod Save Bros and the Bulwarks, etc., they're separate, right? Like they are media empires, massive ass fucking entities into themselves, but they are also not beholden to the corporate structures of traditional media, and they're also not beholden 100% to the corporate structures of the Democrats. As a result of that, they want to have one foot in, one foot out, but they can flirt with a man like Hasan Piker. They can bring Hasan Piker onto their podcast. They can talk to Hasan and have conversations with him and see where, well, maybe your positions aren't as extreme as we've been led to believe. Maybe there is something to be said about, these leftists and what we consider to be far leftist extremists or radicals are speaking some sense in terms of them advocating on behalf of human rights. So they can do that. But the Pod Save boys also never want to lose access. Like they got Obama on tap. Like they can call the guy, like they can text him, right? Like that's an unbelievable amount of power and access, especially like, I'm sure they don't abuse it, but I'm sure it's one of those things where like normal people don't know what that's like in terms of like content producers and podcasters. So this is where the corporate side, even though they're independent, even though Pod Save America, the Bulwark or Midas Touch, they're independent. I want the same rules to apply to this and people to understand that this works the same way that Joe Rogan is independent, right? Like for a long time, Glenn Greenwald would talk about how the future of media is independent media. I was like, no, what all you're doing is giving so much more power to tech bros who control all of this. Like it's still the same owners, right? Like one tech bro owns all these independent people. They just don't have to be directing what people are creating content about. But the Bulwark, Midas Touch, Pod Save America, etc., they get to have these discussions that MSNBC cannot have, that CNN cannot have. CNN cannot hold a panel and bring on Hasan Piker or bring on Loki or bring on quasi kneecap, quasi celebrities who are also anti-Israel, who are very decidedly anti-Zionist, to get their opinions and to bounce those opinions back off other people and counterpoint it. That's not at all appropriate. What is appropriate is to have a full panel on why Hasan Piker is specifically anti-Semitic. That's a fine CNN panel. Go to town, Jake Tapper. Get your fill, right? But meanwhile, he's going to be going on Pod Save America, and yeah, when you take away the clips and you take away the America deserved 9/11, the skull fucking Don Crenshaw kind of shit, when you take all that away, if you hear him actually express his beliefs on those topics, well, yeah, what's happening? The Pod Save America comment section is filling up with people being like, oh, so he's not actually this extremist terrorist jihadist that I was led to believe.
We all know what the real reason is, and we all know the real reason is Israel, because you have openly, as a part of Third Way, pushed Democrats to literally align with right-wing forces who actually do demonstrate, maybe not anti-American, but racist and misogynistic offenses. The problem is, once again, in the old era, in the old age of the media, if I was some college activist or if I was just like some guy with no platform whatsoever, then yes, most things that you heard about me would be from the gatekeepers, right? You would just hear what Dana Bash had to say about me. You'd just hear about Jake Tapper. You would just hear what Mark Levin had to say about me. And that's the only information that you would be able to make up your mind on, right? Like you would be like, this is the only thing I know about this guy. He seems terrible. In the new media environment, it doesn't work that way. I sometimes have either a competitive or sometimes a larger audience than these guys do, right? So people can hear from me directly. So it doesn't work that way. That's kind of what Ezra Klein was talking about. The through line in the freakouts over Rogan and Piker is snobbery and nostalgia. The GOP has already embraced new media, but many liberals still want manor mavens, legacy media gatekeepers who went to Yale and tell them what is acceptable to discuss.
I don't know why people are making fun of Gal Gadot in the YouTube section, but I'm so here for it. I can't not read that in her voice. Call L, no.
That's it. Why does ContraPoints hate you so much? Is it just because you called out her bad Israel take she had? I'm not a fan of her, but she hates you for real. Yeah, she's just leaned into being a total defender of the Democratic Party, has like some right-wing points on that as well.
Oh, we're finally at ContraPoints.
I don't know why she just has like such a strong affinity towards the nation state of Israel. Could be, some unchecked Islamophobia potentially. But yeah, she became Hasbara points. She was quiet for the longest time on the issue of Israel and then chose to speak out somewhat in favor of Israel and very critical of the pro-Palestinian wing of the party. Literally, I think it was 2 days.
I never believed the whole Contra denazified folks. I did to a certain extent, right? I don't think there's like a metric we can measure, but there was a lot of people who gave first-hand testimony talking about how they left the alt-right or whatever you want to really, give credit to that for. I think that she was brilliant in being a communicator and an effective communicator for a variety of topics that otherwise would not have had a lot of people understand and get mainstream access to. Like, we give scientific communicators a lot of credit, but we don't give political or internet communicators a lot of credit, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on corners of the internet that people who just don't understand the online worlds as much, or just aren't as depraved as, say, myself, and are going to spend hours in rabbit holes, they just have no idea. Like, if you say Gamergate to them, they'll know what it means in terms of, like, I've heard of Gamergate, right? That's like the sexist thing in video games or something, but they don't know any of the details. They're not going to be able to explain to you the history of how this actually, in the modern political era, played a significant role that should never be ignored, right? We need to understand how all these systems are interconnected, that kind of stuff. That's where ContraPoints absolutely excelled. She like, you could say that, like, her era, I know a lot of people get pissed off at Breadtube and the Breadtube era of, like, the performative theater kid stuff, where it's like, you clearly want to spend more money on props and makeup and costumes and sets and theatrics than you do on actual causes. Like, I think that's a valid criticism of the Breadtube era, because the bigger and famous and better Breadtube producers and the big three became, right, H-Bomb, Philosophy Tube, and ContraPoints, as they grew, so too did their productions and their sets and their costumes and their elaborate creativity. But that elaborate creativity was also a thing that was pulling in a lot of audiences and new people who otherwise might not be clicking on these kind of videos that talk about debunking the alt-right ecosystems and what exactly does it mean to be a chaser. Like, maybe the average person is going to click on that, or maybe the average person is going to, like, I think in that communication, especially for cis people, like, ContraPoints was kind of unparalleled in that she was really good at explaining trans concepts and issues to cis people who were not wrapping their heads around this, or were only learning about this stuff through a lens of the alt-right and the 4chan and that kind of stuff. Like, if that was your only way of absorbing information on what it was to be trans, and it was really bad corners of the internet and online, there were very few vectors for people who would speak your language, the language of incels, the language of the alt-right, the language of groypers. There was very few people who knew that language and could speak that language to you and then communicate to you why that language is fucked up and why these beliefs are fucked up and why you're going, like, in that sense, I think she did a really, really good job. And I think it's completely fine to be like people who were once at one point or another useful instructors or teachers. It turns out that they have limitations because they could be shitty people, or they could be racist, or there's limits towards their understanding or even openness to wanting to help end all forms of oppression. Like, I think there's even, as someone who's watched the totality of her catalog, there's even kind of ContraPoints episodes where you can tell that she's wrestling with this kind of stuff internally in her dialogue and speeches, where it's kind of like, but I like stuff, and I like nice things, and I like that, like, I can get my Patreon money and the money comes out of my card when I swipe it in the bank machine, and I like stuff and that kind of stuff, and like I like material possessions, like that kind of conflict. And like, as much as you want me to be like, hey, you need to be our leftist queen, and you need to understand and read The Conquest of Bread, and I need you to have read Luxembourg going to need to have read obviously Engels and Marx, but like you need to read all the theory so you understand and get to the conclusion that anyone who understands this and has humanity will, in that these unjust hierarchies are created by a capitalist system, so you can then undo this capitalist system for the rest of us. And it's like, right, but this capitalist system also comes with some perks when you're at the top of the game, right? Like there really is only a few, like for everyone who made fun of Breadtube, how many Breadtubers are still around today making quote unquote bank? Like I know there was this like, oh, Breadtube dominated YouTube and it just took over and all this kind of stuff. Most of what you could consider of what was the Reddit or subreddit of Breadtube, like in the production video stage of Breadtube, in that phase, most of them are gone. Like there's a few, obviously like the big ones, like everyone got to a point of you wanted to either be ContraPoints and you were working towards wanting to become ContraPoints, and then the people who were actually successful at achieving those kind of tiers of ContraPoints, they just stopped making videos. It's like you're getting over $10,000 a month on your Patreon, and then at that point, people are just like, I don't know what it is. All of a sudden, it's like, well, I don't need to spend, 6 months making a Patreon video. I don't need to spend 1 month making a Patreon video. I can spend 6 months making a Patreon video, or maybe 1 year making a Patreon video. And it's going to have so much research and so much theatrics and so much makeup and so much costumes and so much elaborateness. And like, it's going to blow minds, and it's going to be really such a spectacular, unbelievable presentation. And at the end of the day, for me, it kind of became, for what? Because the saddest thing about Breadtube for me was seeing a post-October 7th uselessness. Maybe not even Breadtube. Breadtube might be the wrong thing. Like the Nebula class, whatever you want. Like there seems to be a level of content producers who were doing leftists and progressive content and stuff like that, talking about stuff about the world, and they're really, really great on a variety of topics. So good on queer history, so good on LGBTQ plus oppression, so good on that kind of stuff. But when it came to indigenous rights, colonialism, real anti-colonial activity, anti-blackness, deconstructing, racist hierarchies, especially internalized ones, all of a sudden it became kind of a like, oh, why are we getting so political? Then post October 7th, it's like, all of the goodwill that all of these massive creators have amassed, as in you have hundreds of thousands of followers, you make more money than most people will ever see in their lifetimes, you're rich, you're powerful, you're famous, and you have your own media empires. You can basically make videos on any topic you want. Like you can have the freedom now to spend a whole year making a video on Twilight if you wanted. If that's really the thing that you think is the most important thing in the world right now, if that's the most important topic, you can go out and you can take down a plagiarist. You could make a video on plagiarism and why plagiarism is bad, and why this one plagiarist did a bad thing. And I agree, that's a really shitty thing that one person did, and it's a really good thing that we don't have to hear about James Somerton anymore. But also there's other things going on that I think also warrant our attention, and I don't think it's unfair that people who have like made all of these Breadtubers rich and famous down the pathway to get there, they also might feel a little betrayed that they supported these projects of these incredible creatives who brought forward these messages that hadn't been seen on a scale on YouTube like that before. But now there's people in other parts of the world that really need our help and our attention, and everyone is going silent for the first time now on this one topic, specifically in relation to Israel and Israel's genocide of Palestinians and Israel's colonialism. And that feels so scary and lonely and weird now, that like, where are all the heroes that the left was supposed to have amassed all this time? That the right has all their people that they can say are pro-Trump, are pro-genocide, are pro-Israel, are pro-extermination, because that's who they are. They're racist. They've been avowed racists and white supremacists and colonializers and all that kind of stuff for a while. So this is all on brand for them. I'm not surprised to see all of them being a part of this. I'm actually more shocked to see some of them being like, I don't know if I'm on board with all this kind of stuff, right? But for the people on the other end, that's not something that I ever thought I would have to have a talk or a conversation about, period. I never thought I'd be like, oh yeah, when stuff got really bad, people stepped up, right? Because like, you keep seeing that shit. I've seen it in writing, I've seen it of people tweeting about it, I've seen it said out loud. I think it's so true. Like, all the things that you've ever wondered, what would you have done during the Holocaust? What would you have done during chattel slavery? What would you have done during the segregation of indigenous people from their families while their kids are being taken away? Well, the answer is now because you're doing it now, because a lot of those things are happening now still, and we're not really doing anything to talk about it or to stop it. And I have to reckon with the fact that I'm not an abolitionist, a violent abolitionist. I'm not taking up arms and charging at the weapons manufacturing shipping plants in my area right now. So I would have been one of the people who was saying slavery is wrong. We need to abolish slavery. This shit is fucked. But I wouldn't have been a John Brown. And you know, part of you wants to romanticize, well, I definitely would have been John Brown. All of us would have been. Nah, the truth is the reality of the structures as they were back then, to be a John Brown was to eventually die, was to risk your life and eventually die. And if you have friends, family, children, you know, there's a dependence that you have that you can't just, you know, always do whatever you think is like the most moral thing. Like we live in a society. You have to help other people out. You have to work on other projects. You have to go and help out your friends, your family. You might have family members who are suffering immensely right now that you don't have time to think about the struggles of people in Lebanon. You're like, yeah, my own, you know, cousin is dealing with addiction right now. I have to go help them. I need to like help them find housing. I need to help them, whatever that case may be, right? All this kind of stuff. It became and boiled over to a point where it's very disheartening and disillusioning for anyone who thought that there was a cohesive or a left online or an online left in the sense of presenters and content creators who were going to do shit all. Like I think some of them definitely showed that they care about these issues. It doesn't matter, you know, at what period of time they're taking place in. Sean, great example. Sean's videos are as good today as they've ever been. I think they'll continue to be. Big Joel's another really good example. Lindsay Ellis is another really good example. Like, there's multiple people. Dead Domain, Jesse Gender. There's lots of people that make lots of content still to this day that are going to be from a, you know, anti-capitalist materialist lens of this is how we end oppression and unjust hierarchies, and then I understand how the world works, so I got to work on trying to make it better within the context of reality. I'm going to occasionally want to just like spend a day offline hanging out with friends, because otherwise what's the point of life, right? That kind of stuff, that balance. There are people who do that all the time, right? And there are people who are still awesome, but I think a lot of us just honestly, I'm talking about someone who was a fan of these people too. Like I wasn't just a fan of ContraPoints. I've worked with ContraPoints. I'm one of the few people who has a ContraPoints story where I was trying to, in my early days of leaving, I used to work for a company that did digital distribution. When I found out about Breadtube and Breadtubers, I wanted to help Breadtubers by combining my knowledge of the industry of being able to get shows on Amazon Prime and stuff like that. That was the job that I had with Breadtubers, and get their shit onto bigger and better platforms so more people heard the message. And I thought that was going to be a really cool thing. So I was trying to work with ContraPoints. I was trying to work with everybody, right? I was emailing everyone being like, hey, by the way, love your videos. So great. Have you ever thought about having your stuff on Amazon Prime? If you want to know that whole saga, I've got a video on it. You can watch the whole thing, but long story short, Amazon Prime, kind of early days, icky and transphobic. Let's just say that. They were being very strange compared to the other stuff that I'd uploaded to Amazon Prime. They were being very strange towards me trying to get ContraPoints, despite the fact that ContraPoints had way more pedigree. Even back then, she had way more pedigree and, viral reach than any of the other shows I had no trouble uploading, even if they were controversial. Like, I was doing digital distribution for series on serial killers, on murderers, and that's then true crime. True crime, it was back then and still is like a gold mine for digital distribution. So I had no trouble working with clients and you know, executives on the end of things with Amazon to get shows in true crime on their servers. ContraPoints was the first time I was trying everything in my power to get the ContraPoints show onto Amazon Prime, and they were being assholes about it every step of the way. They at one point were saying that like this material is like X-rated, and I was like, there's zero nudity, there are zero shots, there's not even a nipple in this episode. This is YouTube friendly shit. But yeah, she talks about a lot of issues related to LGBTQ plus stuff, a lot of trans issues, stuff like that. Maybe these are concepts that you're not as familiar with, because back then Amazon Prime had zero like trans content on there. But so Amazon Prime back then was transphobic, in my opinion. I don't have proof that that's the reason they were rejecting it, but I felt, having done this before and having done this in a professional capacity, Amazon Prime was intentionally not allowing me to publish ContraPoints, the show, which I had the legal licensing rights to do, on Amazon Prime, specifically because she was trans and she was talking about trans issues, and they were not comfortable with that. So that's my story. That's how much, like, back then I respected ContraPoints' work, and I still respect those videos, by the way. I wasn't just working on that because I thought it would be profitable. I was also doing that because I wanted to get her videos on a much bigger platform, and get that message out to more people, and that I thought was a good fight that would also, obviously, yeah, I mean, we live in a society, TM, get paid to eat, etc. So yeah, I was doing that both as a business venture and because I thought it was a good thing to do, to put that kind of stuff out there, and they were assholes about it. All that being said, like, I'm not a hater. And I've never been a ContraPoints person who's like, I don't think that this video she did is good enough, or I don't think, like, I agree with all the controversies that have been levied at her previously for working with people like Buck Angel and working with people who have a history of transphobia or a history of bigotry. I agree with that controversy, and I've never been a cancel outright person, as in, like, and because of that controversy, I don't think a single one of you should ever watch another ContraPoints video. That was never me. I was never the 2 degrees of cancellation or 6 degrees of separation, whatever you want to call it. I was always just like, I will criticize her for having done that, and at the same time, I think this new video that she's put out is really, really good. I'm going to watch it and analyze it, that kind of stuff, right, back and forth. But when it came to this specific issue, like, this is one in which I think it's really defined so much going forward of who you can trust on some level online, in terms of, like, is there going to be limits to their activism? Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the reality. Some people are going to want to advocate for gay rights, but just gay rights for white gay men. And that's it. And that's the level of their activism. That's it stops for them, right? Some people want to talk about anti-colonial projects within certain frameworks, right? I can understand that maybe if you're talking about, like, say, China absorbing Taiwan, well, then I've got some very strong opinions. Then I really need to let you know about what I think about this issue. But when it comes to Israel and Palestine, I mean, I don't know if you've read the Bible. It's kind of in the Bible. Yeah, they kind of do have the right to want that land, because I know that, like, Israel means something different in the Bible. Technically, it's a name, and it's actually a new name given to someone who had a previous name. That name was Jacob, and then they got changed from Jacob to Israel, and so then Jacob's children became the children of Israel. Yeah, and Israel, the country, didn't exist back then, so that part's also true and weird and strange. So there's not really a justification from the Bible, and also it's the Bible. I mean, if we're gonna use the Bible as a justification for anything, it ends poorly. That stuff is bad too. I'm just saying all that, but, like, it is sad, right? That we live in this moment here where this is still a conflict happening. Is she a full-blown Zionist? I'd say she's a liberal Zionist, right? I'd say that's the fairest thing. I would watch Overzealot's video. He breaks down the 6 point. I think she had 6 major points in that Reddit post that she did about everything. She acknowledged what Israel is doing as a genocide, but this is one of those conversations it's more complex than simply saying, if I say Israel bad, I'm absolved, right? Absolved of what? I don't know what we're trying to absolve one another of. Like, I can say Orange Man bad. That's not really much of a critique outside of, yeah, Trump sucks, right? Israel is doing genocide, and that's wrong, and we can agree on that. But moving forward, I mean, what are you trying to suggest here? Are you trying to suggest that we just end the nation state of Israel? What happens to the millions of Jewish people who live there? Are you trying to say that it's justifiable to exterminate the millions of Jewish people who live in Israel? Isn't that just like a mass extermination of its own? And it's like, I never said that. I'm not saying that we should exterminate anybody, actually. I'm saying that, like, in the same way that we look at nation states prior to this that have done apartheids, say apartheid South Africa, there is clearly a method and a pathway forward that we can take as a country and as a world, right? Like, we need to unite together to say that we're going to oppose apartheid taking place in this part of the world, and we're not going to do, in the same way there was a boycott and divest movement in apartheid South Africa, we should be doing a similar one here, in which we don't have business relationships and we don't support companies that do business in an apartheid state that is directly going to exploit the labor of people who live there, and we might get cheaper products as a result of that, but that's deeply and fundamentally wrong, right? Like, it's one of those, like, really, really long conversations where we can't keep advocating for a two-state solution and not admit to ourselves that what we're doing is a form of modern-day Zionist propaganda. because the other state does not want a two-state solution. The other state is trying to exterminate the other state. If one country is trying to exterminate another people, and you sit there being like, I think the fairest thing is a two-state solution, then you are ignoring one state trying to exterminate the other one in the process. If we also focus and try to say, like, our biggest fears right now and the thing we should be worried about the most is how the anti-Semitism of all this will impact North American people, that's also really messed up, because no, that should not be our primary focus right now. That should not be at all what we're concentrating our energy on when some group is being exterminated. When that group is being exterminated, how we discuss this and how that reflects upon the feelings of people in the West who are supplying the weapons to do the extermination, that's not a priority. And any of ours, myself included, right? Like, Canadians and Canadian feelings should not be prioritized if Canada is selling weapons to Israel, or selling weapons to the United States that sell weapons to Israel that are being used to blow up Palestinians. My feelings don't matter. That doesn't mean that my feelings aren't valid, or that I don't have feelings, or that I might not be sad about things in one way or direct. But I'm just saying, in the scheme of things, whose feelings should you prioritize? A Canadian who's wealthy and comfortable and eats okay, kind of things like that, versus a bunch of people who are impoverished being bombed. Which is like one of the situations where oftentimes that part of the discussion, all of those, I think, keep being distractions, or keep distracting people from otherwise emancipatory action. If we sit here talking about, did Israel bomb a hospital? If we sit here talking about how bad is anti-Semitism getting and why don't we tackle anti-Semitism as our primary focus? If we sit here discussing for hours how rich and privileged Americans or Canadians feel about all this, and are we prioritizing our feelings currently in relation to all that, they're still getting bombed. They're still being starved. They're actively being starved right now. That's why I think everything that is being done in the opposite direction distracts from that to a very net negative degree. And I say all this because I also agree with the sentiment that any single time someone wants to change their opinion on it, holy fuck, are my doors open. What an amazing, incredible anti-Zionist, anti-capitalist ally Contrapoints would be if she came back and suddenly was like, you know what? Fuck it, I did the reading, as I often do, because she reads a lot for her videos and her documentaries, and here's the following books that everyone said I should read on this topic. It's the same, 7 or 8 books that oftentimes people say people should read on this conflict specifically, and I read them, and yeah, I am now going to be decidedly working towards ending the apartheid state of Israel. That would be amazing. That would be fantastic. This is less, and has always been less about, at least for me anyways, I can't speak for everyone else though, about like, who are we going to cancel today? Do we have our cancel cards out, everybody? Who are we canceling? Who's on the docket today? Who fucked up? Who said a thing? Who slipped up? Who didn't use the proper pronouns today? Who got the pronoun police on them? And you tell me who did it, and we'll cancel them live on stream, because that's what I want. I don't want to critique power. I want to endlessly critique people with power. That's what I want.
Days before, there was this massive sea change because there was tremendous amounts of coverage about Israel doing a famine in Gaza. Like, it was unbelievable. 2 years in, she didn't speak about Israel at all. No peep. Her fans were constantly demanding she say something. Then she went out to Reddit, which is the most, at the time, the most pro-Israel platform that she could find, and released this massive statement. The statement itself...
Okay, my first major disagreement. I don't think that the statement was made on Reddit specifically because it was a pro-Israel platform. I think the statement was made on Reddit because she has a large subreddit that is obviously pro-Contrapoints, and she wanted to address her fans directly through this. I think that's why she posted there.
Was flawed. I guess that's the, best... this is the nicest thing I can say about it, right? The statement itself was flawed, and it basically put the blame on the pro-Palestinian
Number 1, Doom. The week after October 7th, it was clear the mood amongst Israeli leaders and civilians was overwhelmingly kill or be killed, existential panic, and the unstoppable lust for revenge. It reminded me of the U.S. after 9/11. There was no reasoning or protesting the amount of it, nor was it politically feasible for the U.S. to withdraw aid to Israel on a time frame that would make a difference. It would have required replacing most of Congress and overturning decades of bipartisan strategy and diplomacy. Even in the best case scenario, it would have taken years, so there was a sense of futility, but worse, misery. The leftist pro-Palestine movement quickly decided that their primary goal was not merely opposition to the genocide, but opposition to Zionism in general. That is, opposition to the existence of Israel as a Jewish state. And here they decided to draw the line separating decent people from genocidal fascists, which had the following consequences. It shrunk the coalition. Zionist is a very broad category. Most Jews are Zionists. Anyone who supports a two-state solution is a Zionist. It was politically infeasible. What is the pathway that takes us from the present situation to the dissolution of Israel as a Jewish state? I don't see how it could happen without either a total internal collapse of the Israeli society or else, nuclear war. As usual, leftists have championed a doomed cause. It introduced dangerous ambiguities. The vagueness of Zionism as a political Satan enables all kinds of rhetorical abuses. On the one hand, right-wing Israelis hold up all anti-Zionist protests as existentially threatening and inherently anti-Semitic. On the other hand, there's been a long history of anti-Semites using the term Zionist in deliberately equivocal ways. Zog, etc. Anti-Semites broadly using the opportunity to misappropriate. So a lot of it is focused primarily on things like, I don't think it's at all true that there's a point in not trying to achieve things that you believe are to be unachievable. I mean, that is a defeatist attitude for anything as a generic statement, right? Like, why oppose slavery? There's no way you're going to end it in your lifetime. And then it's like, right, but we should, as a fundamental, be opposing it, shouldn't we? Even if we can't achieve it or we won't achieve it, like, we should be principally opposed to it. And if we can achieve it or we can make progress towards achieving it, that's a net good, right? One that everyone would agree to. But this seems to also really want to focus on, like, the problems with how this is going to impact the American election and the American voting strategy and the left and the progressive movements broadly politically moving forward. If progressives and leftists and democratic socialists and that movement of, the AOC, Bernie Sanders, Zohran Mamdani left in the US align themselves with a position that is anti-Zionist, then that will have very serious consequences and net negative ones is kind of the assessment, right?
Activists and the advocates and the people that were dominated, people who were and how much of a genocide. It's an Ethan Klein thing where it's like, oh, it can't be my own statements being reflected on by my own community that I've cultivated, many of which are anti-Zionist.
I think Rathbone is somehow responsible for this too. It's that one TikTok erased her timeline. She said I'm anti. But here's the thing, right? Like, I'm annoyed by leftists all the fucking time. All leftists are. Like, there's no one who's more annoyed by leftists than leftists. God damn, are leftists ever infuriating and annoying. But they'll never change my resolve on the principles of human rights. I could meet the most annoying people of my lifetime, and I'm still gonna be like, right, but like, it just sucks that you people are annoying and around this issue. But the issue is still fundamentally the issue. I just hate these people so much. Like, I'll give you a great example. Here's some tea, and this is a story no one I think has heard. I recently met with Matt Lieb and Mate and Francesca. We all went out for sushi together with my partner because they were in town here in Vancouver to do some comedy shows. It was lovely to meet them. Amazing people. I can definitely give you the great news. They are just as fabulous in IRL as they are online. Fantastic people. Both Daniel and Matt wanted to talk to me about the recent NDP election in Canada and the clips that they had seen of the NDP election that took place in Canada. And I'm sure some of you have seen the clips of the conference, similar to the DSA conference clips that did the rounds, I think like 4 years ago in the United States, where a lot of right-wingers are mocking it. And right-wingers in the US were mocking it too, by the way. All those clips you've been seeing of people who are holding up like cards that, dictate maybe difficulties that they might have, certain kinds of disabilities that people have, or the necessity for people to acknowledge their pronouns or stuff like that. These video clips and pictures did the rounds all over the right and the liberal corners of the internet. They love making fun of it because to them it's an exaggeration, and it's indicative of what the totality of everything the left wants or fights for is. But what you are demonstrating is that the left is tolerant and inclusive enough because they aren't exterminationists by principle of people who might have extra needs and want to participate in a active democratic process. It is hard to be in a room of 1,000 people. It is hard to be in a room of 1,000 people and to participate in conversation with thousands of people. It's intimidating. You might have social anxiety. It's very loud. So this by its nature is going to be a difficult thing just in general for people who have issues with auditory stimulation, etc. And so these clips always do the fucking rounds. But I immediately started hearing it from Daniel and Matt in relation to like, so that's pretty clown shoes that y'all are still doing that. I mean, I think we stopped that in the US at the DSA because people kind of tuned out, and I was like, no, this has always been a thing. I've been to like Democratic Socialist meetings of Vancouver, for example, or I've been to COPE meetings here in Vancouver. I've been to NDP meetings as well, where there is a certain amount of, we're going to do a land acknowledgement. We're going to state, whether or not people have certain necessities or needs. Sometimes, if you watch those clips, people see them and it seems like ridiculous. The DSA ones, especially. The DSA ones, I remember it was like people who were saying like, point of privilege. I would specifically ask that people no longer, cheer. It provides me with too much audio stimulation. And point of privilege, I would like to ask that people stop doing that. The next person's like, okay, so people stopped cheering and they started clapping. Point of privilege. Clapping actually like triggers me and reminds me of like this and that. So I would ask that people stop clapping, please. And the next person is like, point of privilege. People have begun snapping instead of clapping, and that actually provides me with blah blah blah. And so I would ask that people stop snapping. And the next person's like, people have begun quietly hushing and humming when people say something they agree with. I would ask that people stop. And that was like. That was all the clips that you saw online and people making fun of it, and obviously Tim Pool and Stephen Crowder do like all this kind of stuff like, look how fucking foolish the left is. They can't even hold a meeting without everybody canceling one another, and it's a circular canceling, and everyone is canceling one another for being ableists or for being racists, or this is the problem with woke culture and blah blah blah. You are living in a cartoonish exaggeration version of what you saw. A clip, like the totality of the entire NDP meeting was not people demanding the floor to explain why everyone in there is a bigot for not acknowledging their white privilege properly enough by using the proper terms of white privilege acknowledgement. That never happened. What you saw was one clip that one person took that was like, oh, and they put that online, and everyone's like, I can't believe that was the whole meeting. The majority of the meeting was like every other meeting, because that's what the majority of meetings are like. And in those meetings, if you are inclusive, you will have people from variety of different groups who might want to express themselves because they have the floor, and they should be allowed to. They should be allowed to take a floor and be like, I personally find it annoying sometimes when there are people in leftist spaces who use those spaces to abuse women, and I'm not ashamed to say it, and I'm going to say it right now. Fuck you if you do that. Shame on you. That's a good thing to let that person say that. Yes, it might make a little people feel the ick or whatever you want to say, or you might feel uncomfortable at that moment in that leftist space, or you might be like, oh, fuck off. Are you serious? Like, is that really where we're going with all this? Are you going to honestly talk about like the one person who may have acted inappropriately on the blah, blah, blah? Yes, that like, if not here, where? Because the other side doesn't care. The other side has so far gone into Nazi shit that they are actively doing exterminationist projects and running concentration camps. So yeah, okay, it's not the end of the world if someone said, I'm going to do a land acknowledgement that I feel is for a different indigenous band that wasn't mentioned at the beginning of the ceremony, and I'm going to do that now. And everyone's like, point of privilege. I don't want to be annoyed by your point of privilege. Oh, excuse me, point of privilege, ableism much? Like, this is not reality, okay? This is a cartoonish online hyper-exaggeration version of the left. But even if this was the reality, because as someone who's organized and done organizing and gone to meetings, even if that was all that it was, where I sit there and I have to spend 4 hours of people being like, excuse me, I'd like you to acknowledge my oppression. You haven't acknowledged it yet. Point of privilege. My oppression is more important than yours. Again, if that was the thing, that wouldn't change my fundamental principles as to what we should be fighting for. I would just be like, that's weird that my team is filled with the biggest, most annoying fucking losers. That's too bad. But still, the principles remain the same, right? The principles and what you should be fighting for are the same, regardless if the people annoyed you. to get there, regardless of the people online were annoying to you or bugged you or all that kind of stuff, right? This is the part I've never understood about, like, you can tell someone's beliefs based on what they are angry about at any given time online. Like, if you're mad about how bad Israel is being perceived in the media as a result of Israel's actions, that's telling me something about you as a person. If you're like, why is Israel so bad at propaganda? Or why is Israel so, like, because on some level, you don't want the world to hate Israel as much as they're hating Israel right now, and you're mad about that. That's why you said that thing out loud. That is a very telling statement.
And on the side of truth and justice here, on the side of the Palestinians, getting mad at me, it must be some outsider that's pushing them to criticize me. Not comparing Natalie to Ethan, please. I mean, it's true, though. They're aligned on this. They're aligned on this issue. I say this as someone who has collaborated with her, who's hung out with her, who was shocked by her position on the issue of Israel to begin with. Like, I was pretty open about it. And my commentary on her statement was much nicer, much nicer than many others. My expectation was that she would be the last person to do this because
I went canvassing with folks from the DSA I didn't know, and we made about Jordan Peterson's CCP milking videos. We have a good time. Oh, yeah, sorry, if that wasn't clear. My point is that the versions online you see of the hyper, ultra, woke police left, the reason those are exaggerated versions that do really well online is that they're not indicative of the experience at all. The majority of time I've had, either volunteering, organizing, protesting, you name it, have been awesome. Have been fun, have been very, heartwarming most of the time, because it makes you feel as if you were part of something greater, or that you're not alone and there's more people who actually care about this shit with you. It's beautiful. It's why I keep telling people, if for no other reason than to help your own depression right now, volunteer just for one day, or go donate blood. You can do that any day you want for free. You save 3 lives, apparently. 3 lives. You can go save 3 lives right now. Don't you want to be able to say, I saved 3 lives? That's pretty cool. If you do it twice, you save 6 lives. You do it 3 times, you save 9 lives. Go out there, join an org or volunteer, and it's amazing how much of it is actually therapeutic and makes you feel good. Like, even little acts of taking a whole bunch of dry goods and putting them into pantries where people can access them for free. You don't get to see their faces. You're not sitting there being like, all right, I can't wait to see the hungry family of poors show up, and then the mother of 2 can cry as she grabs a pantry item for the first time that I left for her. It's not that, but just walking away from that pantry knowing that maybe someone who didn't have food that day is going to be able to eat that day, and that you did a +1. Like, a fascist took a -1 somewhere in the world, but you did a +1 in another part of the world. It just makes you feel good. You're just like, ooh, and then I feel a little less depressed, right? There's no other reason to do it than that. You might make friends. You might hang out with people who have similar beliefs. You might have an awesome time. You might not, and you might just feel a little slightly bit better, and that you might feel less alone knowing that you're around 500 people who are screaming free, free Palestine. It has a powerful feeling, and it does sometimes make you feel like maybe this isn't all shit. Maybe there are other people who genuinely alongside you want a better world for no other reason than let's fucking make it better for future generations. That can happen, right? And then also there might be a bunch of families that benefit from it at the end of the day. Who's to say?
because she's actually smart. Like, it was genuinely a surprise because Ethan Klein is
I can't donate blood because I've had gay sex. That's the most fucked up thing in the world. So if you don't know, in Canada, you were in totality ban from donating blood if you were gay, and then they changed that, and now it's you can donate blood if you're gay, but only if you haven't had sex in the last year, which, talk to any gay guy, good luck. But yeah, so if you're a lesbian, it applies just as well. By the way, they're not discriminating just against men specifically there, but you can donate blood as long as you haven't had sex for a year, and that's the rules. Even though they screen donations for HIV, they screen for everything. There's a very thorough system in place. That's just like, I guess, the one extra, if we could just keep ourselves one extra step away from the process.
Like, he doesn't know shit about politics. He's just,
what about bi people? Exactly. Oh, it's have you had gay sex, as in penetrative anal sex either with another man, or have you been penetrated? It could be by a woman, by the way. Like a woman could peg you, and you'll probably be put into this category of, you know, higher risk sexual activities. I'll just put it that way. If you need the graphic details, you can go on Google and learn for the first time as to why, you know, the transfer of HIV is more frequent amongst people who practice, say, anal sex as to people who do not practice anal sex. Go do your research, learn. It's there before you. But it's one of the reasons why I think they justified that form of bigotry for a very long time. But it's also so messed up because, like, it stigmatizes gay people. Anyone who's friends with the gay community will tell you first and foremost, holy fuck, do they ever know? So, like, I'm telling you, someone like, I'm a hybrid. I've friends who are gay and I hang out in the gay scene, and friends who are straight and do not hang out with gay people. So I can tell you the differences between the straights and the gays very clearly. Gay people spend so much more time thinking about the potential for STDs than straight men do. Like, gay men versus straight men, it's two totally different worlds. It's one person telling me, like, and giving me updates about, like, you know, there's all these, like, different prescription drugs you can take that can reduce the amount of potential for you to contract or pass HIV. If you're taking this specifically, you know, on a regular basis, it has this percentage of outcomes. You know, they're tested regularly. They're like, there's a stigma that gay people have this, like, extremely high rates of disease as a result of just being gay because of the stigmas around gay sex, specifically gay male sex, right? And it couldn't be further from the truth in terms of the gay community has had to deal with the actual outcomes of having no one care about them and having, like, actual public policy be like, oh, that disease is predominantly affecting you. Okay, you die then. Die now. All of you die. Like, I don't care. That's the gay disease, and it's taking out the gays, and we hate the gays. So this is actually kind of just ordained shit from God, I feel. We're in the middle of some great biblical, finally, God is getting rid of this problem for us kind of shit. And then it turns out that that's a little short-sighted. Turns out it's not specific to gay people, and now the straights are getting it. And you probably should have taken this a lot more seriously at the start of it, but here we are. Well, that's something that gay people had to live through and go to the funerals of and just look at the stacks upon stacks of corpses and fucking caskets. So that had a profound effect on the consciousness of the gay community, who then over years not only started doing tons and tons of advocacy for both safe sex, but also for people going and getting checked, people going to get screenings, people going to get STD checks, all that kind of stuff. And even though the stigma remains to this day that the gay community is somehow more filthy and degenerate, especially gay men specifically, right? Because it's like, well, I mean, gay men just have untethered, uncontrollable sex with each other all the time, and there's this high probability of them obviously contracting diseases. But it's like, I know the mythos of the gay orgies and the gay suck and fucks and these dudes are just doing these giant man trains on cruise ships and stuff. I'm not saying that's not happening, but I'm saying that, like, if proportionally you were to take as many straight people doing the same kinds of activities in the straight world, there would not be the same levels of people discussing the amount of antiviral immunotherapy that they could be taking prior and vaccines that they can take so they don't contract or get HIV and make sure that they're up on their HPV vaccinations and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's such a big gap between straight culture and gay culture, and a lot of that is because gay culture had to deal with mass extermination and death, and so that kind of, as a survival aspect, got built into gay culture, which is also really dark and sad, but just the reality of history.
Responding to whatever he sees on his timeline, whatever is presented to him in his subreddit, oftentimes by sexpestiny Redditor.
Jesus Christ, are these all Ethan?
He's
Hasan
just
posts?
responding to whatever he sees on his timeline, whatever is presented to him in his subreddit, oftentimes by.
This is haunting. It's just so much. You know that meme where there's, like, SpongeBob in the straitjacket and like it's used to point out that transphobes are just obsessed with trans people so much that they're in like, you know, in the straitjacket of their own design. I feel like he's got that for Hasan. Like, Ethan is perpetually locked into a Hasan room. I don't get it. I have friends that I stopped being friends with and that I hate now because of their beliefs, that, like, they were friends I was with in high school, and then, you know, you grow up and you become a better person, I guess, but they stay the same, and then you're like, well, fuck you, you racist. That, and I'm not, like, longing for them. I'm not like, I really wish I could change you. It's just like I can't imagine easier fat to cut off. You know, you're just like, yeah, fuck that shit. I don't have enough time in my day for someone who bugs me that much and won't learn or grow. Now I understand that this is the inverse of that because it's Ethan who should be learning and growing, but that's not how he sees the world, right? So you got to understand from his POV, he sees the world completely opposite, the upside down from what you see it as, and so he's still trying to be like, I can fix him. If I just get Hasan to see the right amount of Instagram stories and videos and content nukes, I can eventually get him to realize the error of his ways, and maybe he'll praise Israel properly for me.
By sex pestiny Redditors that LARP as though they are H3 fans, right? She thinks you're a revcom, so I don't think she knows.
In Scotland, if you've had queer sex in the last 3 months, you may still be able to give blood, but a more individual assessment will be given. That's better. I mean, that's better than Canada for sure. I agree. Change is possible. We changed it here. I was one of the people who was advocating for a while that it's not only draconian but homophobic for us to have a outright ban on all gay people donating blood. So that did change. But now gay people can donate blood, but they specifically have had to have not had anal sex in the past year if they're men. And that's like, it's not an ask that you would ask of straight people, right? There is no straight people can't have sex in the past year to donate blood. They will ask you, don't get me wrong, because I donate blood, I know the questionnaire, right? They'll ask you a lot of things like, do you have sex with sex workers? How often have you ever had sex with a sex worker? Have you ever used cocaine? Have you ever used intravenous drugs? Have you ever used or shared a needle? Like the things that you would ask to be able to screen out and try and get rid of people who have a high probability or potential for sexually transmitted diseases, right? So that's the reason why they're asking those kind of questions. And so I think it's totally fair to ask a question, have you had unprotected sex with a sexual partner, within this period of time or ever? And if so, have you been tested for an STD, right? And if the answer is no, then sorry, like it's just like we can screen it and we will screen it, but like why not just make it easier? But you can do that without discriminating towards gay people. You could ask a gay person the same thing you'd ask a straight person, right? Have you had sex in the past year and was it unprotected? And then if the answer is yes, have you had tested for an STD? Could you provide that kind of testing evidence? And the answer is no, then you can't donate today. Easy. Then you're not discriminated against just gay people.
Was that much? Wait, what? You just gave him material for his next 6-hour podcast, buddy? Okay, whatever. I don't give a shit. What's he gonna do?
Can straight people have anal sex and still donate? Yes, I think, but it's that situation. Have you had unprotected sex with a sexual partner in the past year? And if the answer is yes, and that includes anal sex, then it's going to be like, have you been tested for STDs? And did you get a clear testing for STDs kind of thing?
Is he going to cancel Ezra Klein now? King Lib. He's going to be like, Ezra Klein, you're canceled. You're the king of anti-Semite. You got sucked into Hasan's dangerous web of lies, like he did with Sam Cedar. Ezra Klein, another Jew hater. We must cancel our New York Times subscriptions, guys. Like, is that what he's going to do? Okay. Good luck. What is this? Hen Mazik? Here's his talking points. It's a comforting notion that if we just allow people to spread lies and hate about our brothers and sisters in Israel, they'll hate Jews in the diaspora a little less. But the reality is hate, yes, including that hate that calls for the dissolution of the world's one Jewish state and the home of half a Jews living, has little to do with our actions. Read my take on Ezra Klein's latest op-ed on Hasan Piker on my Substack. It's so funny to read this article or to read this sentiment as anything but, if you give equality to all that live in the land that Israel currently occupies and dominates, you want another Holocaust to happen. Okay? It's an unbelievably racist thing to say. And most people don't even comprehend how unbelievably racist it is. We just take it for granted. This is the same exact principle that whites in South Africa presented, where they were like, what, we can't have white ethno state? What are you talking about?
Yeah. And that's why I said Ta-Nehisi Coates, I think, is probably one of the most effective modern communicators for making people realize that paradigm shift. I'm going to be honest with you. It's going to be the weirdest thing, like 50 years from now, that it was totally normal to ask people, politicians in the United States about a completely foreign entity and whether or not they believed it had a right to exist as a supremacist ethno-state. Like when you finally take a step back and realize we used to ask that as a question, and it wasn't being asked by Nazis or racists, by the way, or at least overt racists, people who would pretend to care about liberal values and care about democracy and stuff like that. They would sit there and they would be like, do you believe that Israel has a right to exist, and does it have a right to exist as a Jewish supremacist ethno-state? And if you answered no to that, you were the bad guy. You had to say that you believed that this colonial country that is oppressing another people by its existence and cannot exist without the destruction of Palestinians. It's like that entity needs to exist as a uniquely Jewish supremacist ethno-state. That's a really fucked up thing to ask one another, and to also demand that the answer be in the affirmative. You got to be like, yes, I do. And if you don't, it's like, oh, so you're anti-Semitic. Why is that anti-Semitic? Why is it in any way a criticism of Semitic people, by the way? This is all Semitic people, anyone who speaks Semitic languages, to say that I oppose genocide. Why is that a criticism? And I know you're speaking specifically of Jewish people. Why in the world is that a specific criticism of Jewish people to be against that? Because most Jewish people who are anti-Zionists are also of that exact same mindset. It's so weird to put yourself, and then to ask other people that, and to make it be a pledge. It was a pledge that we would ask each other in the West specifically, do you believe in Israel's right to exist? And you had to say yes. And then, do you believe it has a right to exist as a Jewish supremacist ethno-state that by its existence creates a separate class of individuals who are oppressed for their own existence, for their religion, for their beliefs, for their ethnicity? Do you believe in that? And do you think that it is right for that to happen? And people had to be like, yes, I do. I believe in the Jewish supremacist ethno-state of Israel. And if you said no, you were a political fucking liability. Even if you danced around it, even if you were kind of like, I believe in a two-state solution. Okay, but you haven't said the thing yet. Right. I believe in Israel's right to exist. Right. But I also don't think we should be quite so cruel to Palestinians. Oh, anti-Semite. That's what you are. That was anti-Semitism. Yeah, you did an anti-Semitism there. That's you're a vile, gross, disgusting monster of a man. Let's destroy Jeremy Corbyn's career forever. Yeah, he has no viability in politics ever again because of that one take, that one stance he said the thing, and that's really, really bad. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the individual, like Avi Lewis, for example, they can be Jewish. They can be a Jewish head of a political party, and they'll still be criticized for being anti-Semitic. For not actually, concentrating and centering the feelings of Jewish Zionists within Canada. And because of that, he hates Jews, and he's an anti-Semite, and he's anti-Jewish. He had Zionists saying racist ass shit like he would have ratted out Anne Frank. They said that. Like, that was the thing that Zionists in Canada were posting about Avi Lewis, the kind of shit that, like, that's anti-Semitic. That's racist towards Jewish people. That's a really fucked up thing to say. But all of the concerns about so-called identity politics and being firm on your anti-Semitism go out the window, because this has nothing to do with anti-Semitism or racism or protecting them in that direction, right? It's all about this colonial project. And if you are against this colonial project, oh, well, then you are against all Jewish people. And then it's like, wait, what? And the Jewish people who are against the colonial project, they're also against all Jewish people. So, wait, I'm so lost. What's going on here?
About the white dominated ethno-state? You just want us to die, huh? Like little old Rhodesia standing alone in the entire continent of Africa can't even have it. You know? It's so stupid. So many black countries. Why can't there be a white one in the continent of Africa? You know? The photo he's using, yeah, he's trying to say that, like, Ezra Klein wants to.
So did Ezra Klein's article really praise? Did he switch? Because he was the one writing articles about how Charlie Kirk did politics the right way. I'd be surprised if he did a pro. See, I've seen this, that there was a anti Hasan Piker article and then a pro Hasan Piker, just in the headlines, right? So New York Post is obviously jumping all over this one. Hold on, let me scroll down. There's a lot of ads for Trump steaks. This is why there's no liberal Joe Rogan was the original title. This is why there's no liberal Joe Rogan. Opinion by Ezra Klein got changed to Hasan Piker is not the enemy, I think. Yeah, it got changed to Hasan Piker is not the enemy is the new title. But that doesn't mean that there's a change to the content of the article itself, right? Like, I haven't actually read the article itself. Hasan Piker is not the enemy. Oh, it's paywalled. This is, oh, the old one is still, huh. Okay, so I just opened up the New York Times and it went back to the old one? This is why there's no liberal Joe Rogan. Oh, it flipped in the opposite direction. It used to be Hasan Piker was not the enemy, and it went the other direction. Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, chat. It's the other way around, Lance. Now I'm reading all of us. Lance, you got it backwards. Ah, okay. Interesting. But the content of the article itself didn't change, right? I'm just gonna look for editor's notes. No, there's no editor's notes. He didn't change the content of the article. Ezra Klein joined opinion in 2021. Yeah. All right, but let me see what the crux of this is. I can even put on some sexy music for y'all, okay? This was not only bad politics, but also bad democratic practice. These shows had come from nowhere and gained millions of loyal listeners. They had earned their viewership by voicing something that made millions of Americans feel seen, heard, or at least interested. In avoiding those spaces, Democrats avoided contact with these kinds of voters they otherwise claimed to represent. This is the mistake that Democrats often make when they talk about what they did wrong in 2024. They realize now that they should try to talk to the people who listen to these shows. They are less likely to realize that they should listen to the people who talk on these shows. Beneath this is an important principle. Conversation is not a reward to be bestowed upon those whom we agree. It's a necessary habit in a democracy. The point is not to find agreement so much as to deepen the understanding. To talk with others is to believe in the possibility of change, theirs and your own. Whether you like everything that someone has said or should be severed to the question as to whether or not that person is worth talking to. The space for such conversations was once wider. In 1968, okay, so I see what this is. So this article is basically like, we shouldn't shun Pod Save America for talking to Hasan Piker or Midas Touch. It's not that Hasan Piker's views on Israel are good. I gotta get to that part because this is the end of the article. I thought we'd have the conclusion here. The winners of the attention wars today are typically people who say outrageous things in the past or are still saying them in the present. When you're dealing with podcasters or streamers who talk unstructured or unrehearsed for hours each week, if not every day, there's going to be so much said that it's almost inevitable that a dossier of dumb statements could be compiled. To write those people out as unacceptable political discourses to back yourself into shrinking, sanitized corners of the public sphere. I feel like they're still having the debate surrounding whether or not it's appropriate to talk to people on your show who have had bad takes in the past. And I guess Hasan Piker is being equated to some of the worst infractors, because I know there were some other people saying like Hasan Piker, Nick Fuentes, same thing, exactly the same thing. And I was like, Nazi versus the guy who's like, you all should have universal health care. Booker admitted on Pod Save America that when he said he would never go on Piker's show, he had never heard of Piker. His communications director had a list of 4 or 5 worst things Piker had said, and Booker used that for the base of his response. Booker got piled on for the admission. Yeah, but I wanted to see what he said about Israel. I think there's a lot wrapped up in the controversy, so let's take it piece by piece. Is Piker a, quote, Jew hater, as the Third Way alleges? In an interview with the writer Aaron Rupenberg, Piker addresses some of his worst comments. I find some of his answers compelling and others less so. The comparison of liberal Zionists to Nazis, for instance, is repugnant and not much improved by Piker clarifying that he opposes ethno-states. What made the Nazis notable wasn't their support for an ethno-state. Ethno-states are common. What made the Nazis notable was their effort to exterminate the Jewish people. And Piker's assertion that all opposition is to reactionary ideology is hard to square with his admiration for Hezbollah. See, this is what I was expecting. This is pure, unadulterated Ezra Klein equivocations going on all over the place. And pretty wild at that, too. But to focus only on those comments is to miss much else of what he says and what he believes. He also says, from pogroms to the Holocaust, Jews have also been singled out by those in power as a scapegoat for the instability and economic volatility that people in power have caused. A resilient, nascent anti-Semitism is a constant threat. He has called anti-Semitism gross, immoral, and a hate crime. He's promoted John Ossoff, a Democratic senator from Georgia who's Jewish. Yeah, but I don't think any of this gets to the core problems with that initial statement that you made. First off, there's a lot of problems with the Nazis. Yes, one of them being the persecution of Jewish people, absolutely. Other categories as well, disabled people, Romani people, LGBTQ plus people, trans and gay people. I think what should be understood, and one of the biggest problems was simply exploring the Nazis and their Nazism in relation to their persecution, extermination of the Jews, is to also ignore the rise of fascism and Nazism, and how the Jews were used as an escape for the errors and problems that were being created under capitalism, right? And that what did fascism do in order to consolidate power and utilize built-in fears that society had under, say, the decadence and excesses of a rich class of people who, even under the austerity of the post-World War Germany, were in existence, right? There was a bourgeois class, there was a rich, powerful elite class of Germany. Hitler didn't come in and say, I'm going to exterminate the rich of society in order to benefit the workers of society. He sold everybody on an idea of being a national socialist, and because at the time socialism and communism were very popular political ideologies, but he did so while also saying and utilizing a bunch of different groups as scapegoats for the problems that were created under capitalism. There was a complete global financial collapse, there was the Great Depression, and in that he was trying to tell and galvanize people that the cause of these woes that they were having, and he was very effective in this, the massive inflation that you're having in Germany, your inability to get a job, the bread lines, all this is caused by the Jews controlling the banks. This is caused by the filth immigrants coming into our society and polluting it and taking our jobs. The Romani immigrants who are coming in and taking our jobs. This is caused by disabled people living off the welfare teat and taking away all of those possible jobs and money that you are earning as a German worker and you're paying in your taxes. That's going to disabled people, that is. It's also coming in the form of decadent society being destroyed by perversions. Jewish perversions coming in the form of homosexuality and trans people existing. That's all coming because of Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld, who happens to be a gay Jewish man. So we need to hit them up as well and burn all of their books, because this kind of degeneracy is leading to all of these problems in society. He was giving everyone an answer for all the problems that were being created under capitalism, and he coalesced that while protecting the bourgeoisie society of Germany. So there wasn't an issue going forward for all of these fascist governments, you know, whether it be the Italians or the French. They knew that there was going to be a preservation of the capitalist class under fascism, under Hitler's Germany, where the richest elites, the people who were the steelworkers and the manufacturers, they were going to be able to keep their businesses, but they then had to work for the Nazis. So you needed to build shelling for the Nazis, weapons for the Nazis, guns for the Nazis. And some of these people, I'm sure you've all heard of, Oskar Schindler, for example, utilized their positions within this corporate capitalist structure of the Nazis to try and save Jewish lives by saying, I need them as workers. Yes, unpaid slave labor, but I'm going to try and get them out of the country through this mechanism, right? That's why the story of Oskar Schindler was worthy of telling. So this is something that is lost in these conversations. If you just look at this only from the problem with Nazism was that the Nazis went after the Jews. That is one of the problems, and one of the things that certainly was horrifying and needs to be called out, and is a good thing that we teach people about the Holocaust and the atrocities of Nazi Germany in relation to the Jewish people and their persecution. But we also need to tell the full story, because Germany was not the only fascist entity, and not going to be the last fascist entity. And there will be more fascist entities that continue to follow this entire pattern over and over and over, where we have to scapegoat vulnerable groups. We have to harken back to an ideal time, a fictional time that doesn't exist, but we have to try and achieve that again. We have to make our country great again in pursuant of achieving that goal. We have to go after forms of sexual degeneracy that we see as actually destroying the ideas of masculinity. The ideals of masculinity is central to fascist organizations and principles and beliefs, which is why it is so important that every single fascist government, they target homosexuals for a reason. There's a reason why the Italians had Cofino. There's a reason why the Germans had paragraph 175. They go after homosexuals because they invalidate the idea of traditional masculinity, which the fascist has to then use as this ideal going forward of what is the Übermensch, what is the ideal potential, ultimate human. And in the Germans, it was the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan race, so they needed to eventually expunge and exterminate all those that were not seen as the ideal. But all of this, it's interconnected and complex and worth exploring and teaching people, rather than simply saying, in this case, right, that like, I don't think Hasan Piker is truly anti-Semitic, because there are examples of him saying that anti-Semitism is bad. But he has also fucked up a number of times, and here's the times in which I think that, he might actually be flirting with anti-Semitism. But he does say that he isn't a Jew hater. I have deep disagreements with Piker, but he isn't a, quote, Jew hater. He's an anti-Zionist. And here, I think the real stakes of this fight come into view. We're living through a rupture in both the meaning and reality of Israel. A Gallup poll from February found for the first time more Americans sympathize with the Palestinians than the Israelis. Amongst Democrats, the gap was overwhelming. 65% who sympathize more with the Palestinians and 17% with the Israelis. The difference, I have argued, is largely generational. Older Americans still view the Israelis more sympathetically, but amongst Americans aged 18 to 34, 53% sided with the Palestinians and 23% with the Israelis. This is new. Before 2023, young people and Democrats were not likely to side with Israelis. Were more likely to side with Israelis. This is not the result of intergenerational psyops or profusions of memes. The Israel that young people know is not the Israel that older people remember. It responded to the savagery of October 7th by flattening Gaza in a brutal campaign that killed at least 70,000 Gazans, taking control of more than half the territory, and herding Gazans, more than 2 million people, into the remainder. Life there remains hellish. Israel's made hopes for a two-state solution fanciful by slicing up the West Bank into Israeli settlements and abetting constant settler violence by keeping a boot on the throat of Palestinian authorities. It has used Iran. So this leads us to, there will be no Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River, Benjamin Netanyahu said. For years, I have prevented the creation of that terror state against tremendous pressure, both domestic and from abroad. We have done this with determination and with the astute statesmanship. Moreover, we have doubled the Jewish settlements in Judea and Samaria, and we will continue on this path. Anti-Zionism is rising as a response to what Israel is doing. It will simply not be possible to treat it as a marginal viewpoint that can be shamed or shunned into invisibility. Yes, anti-Semitism often cloaks itself in anti-Zionism. So don't do the anti-Semites work for them. If you keep telling people that they oppose the Jewish state when they must hate the Jewish people, eventually they will believe you. The impulse to cut those off with whom we disagree reaches far beyond Piker or Israeli-Palestinian debate. It sits at the heart of the cancellation as a political tactic. So this is where I guess he censors it back into the ultimate, and this is the rest of the article up into the conclusion, right? The ultimate part of, it's more important that we have conversations. That's why Charlie Kirk did debate the right way. That's why the most important thing moving forward is for us all to basically work together to be able to have these difficult conversations with people we might disagree with. That's more important than anything. So that part is still kind of just silly. I don't think that the fight of all fights we should be having right now is the hyper enlightened free speech absolutists. But at least he does finally recognize what a lot of other people are hoping will go away, which is the reality that younger generations saw genocide on their phones in 4K, and they will never be able to undo that. There's no PSYOP, there's no propaganda network. That's just the reality of how human beings respond to seeing extermination up close. Even if they haven't lived it or haven't seen it or haven't, like, it's the images post World War II, post victory. Like World War II, it's after the war is over that a lot of the imagery of the Holocaust start becoming available for the first time for people in the West. And a lot of the imagery of the torture of Jewish, Romani, disabled, trans, and gay people suddenly become put into full focus so we can see the actual atrocities and horrors of mass systemic exterminationist projects up close. And that is what leads people and that horror to suddenly have everyone recognize and reckon with the fact that people didn't do anything about it until, in many cases, it was far too late. Sure, the war is over. The Nazis were defeated, as they should have been. But how many Jewish people died as a result of the West ignoring this for so long and standing by for so long? Western media and a lot of international media being complicit in downplaying the severity of what was happening for so long, or ignoring it, or just simply not writing stories on it. In the same way, for years, we didn't hear about how bad things were in Gaza in mainstream media. There was this like 7-month disconnect between what all of you most likely who get your news on the internet and can see it with your own eyes and can go online and on social media see the actual fucking atrocities, what you would experience versus your parents or your grandparents, right? Did you not feel that like 6 or 7 month buffer where all of a sudden they would be getting this kind of like, it's actually kind of messed up what Israel's doing. I don't know how I totally feel about them bombing that hospital. And you're like, bombing that hospital? Did they bomb like 12 hospitals since then? Like, holy fuck, this is so bad. And then 6 months later, it's like, Israel is really evil. It seems like they're killing a lot of kids and civilians, and what is going on there? It's like, we're at the beyond 100,000 civilians dead now. Like, Jesus, what are you talking about? Like, the Lancet estimates that like it was always just so far away as a result of, again, the media being complicit with that too. Coming up on 3 years of genocide in Gaza. Who knows what the fuck is happening in Iran? Who knows what the fuck is happening? I mean, it's happening right now in Lebanon, and it's yet another case of like, well, are we allowed to talk about it, or is the media going to catch up, or we're condemning in the strongest possible terms what Israel's doing to people in Lebanon, but we're not actually going to stop selling them weapons because we can't. The money's too good.
Thank you so much to our patrons for making this show possible. We could not fund it without you. And if you want to join, please check out patreon.com/theserfs to unlock bonus episodes, uncensored content, and all the good stuff. Thanks to Anna Loves Riley, Addercap, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hegbard Salim, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Tigwick, and Words Greenwood.